Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SCORE Fairfield County live webinar on key infrastructure decisions for setting up and operating a successful small business. I'm Alan Rosenberg, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'll be your host. Our presenter today is Bud Freund, and more on Bud in a minute. First, some brief information on SCORE. With 310 offices and 10,000 volunteers nationally, SCORE started in the mid-60s as part of the SBA. At SCORE Fairfield County, we have over 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry process and subject matter expertise. We offer 3 primary value-added services to small business owners: one-on-one counseling, that could be face-to-face, telephone, email, or Skype, educational workshops and webinars, as we're doing today, and extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject experts at your disposal. Our next webinar will be at 12 noon on Tuesday, February 18th, when Karen Schwartz will present Should I Use QuickBooks Online for My Business? Look for the specifics on our fairfieldcounty.score.org website. And for free individual counseling, go to the SCORE website and click on Request a Mentor. Some useful information about today's event. We've set aside time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the chat window anytime during the presentation. It's located on your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and a link of the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next couple of days. Now on our speaker. Bud Freund has been self-employed for 40 years. After graduating from Ithaca College, his national and international assignments were from corporate, magazine, public relation clients. He has provided IT solutions to home and small businesses for over 20 years. He currently teaches technology life skills at King and manages the Bicultural Hebrew Academy Network. As a certified SCORE mentor, he regularly presents technology webinars and workshops at libraries throughout Fairfield County. And now I'll turn it over to Bud.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for joining us. Today I want to talk about that thing that most of us don't really believe we understand and isn't a really important part of our business, and that's the technology that most of us are using to make our businesses run. This webinar was based on 2 things. First of all, later this month, I will be doing my 7th Simple Steps for Starting Your Business. And the first time that I did this, I asked the room of 40 people or so the question, how many of you are planning to start a business without a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone? And nobody raised their hand. So I asked a second time just to validate, and now I make it part of my introduction and the 15 minutes that I get to talk about technology, because it's very important to understand that we're all using this technology to make our businesses run. Second, this webinar that you're seeing, I did last month for our SCORE chapter, and there's a few added bells and whistles to it. But I want to start by talking about this everything thing that we've got. And think about this with me for just a moment. It is your communication, verbal, visual, and written. It's your billing, your banking, and your investing. It's your scheduling, your research, and your entertainment. And it's all in these things that we're carrying around. It's kind of like that Swiss Army knife that you used to have. Now, those 2 hot links there are for 2 documents that are available on our website for you to download that goes through either a bunch of questions or some suggestions about how you can address this infrastructure component that is so important. Think of it this way. If the stove or the refrigerator in your house stopped working, would you wait a month, a week, or a day to get it fixed? This everything thing we've got now is really important to making our businesses run. To the extent that if it stopped working tomorrow, how would you be able to do these 4 things which are integral to any business? And if you leave with nothing else from today's discussion, please take the time to figure out whether you're going to do this from a phone, a tablet, the old laptop that your kids used to use for school, but somehow please make sure that you can continue to keep your business running. And understand that Sony, when they got shut down, had absolutely no idea of how to do that for themselves. So these are the items we're going to be covering. And I've got one other item I've added in, which will be how you can stop tracking of all of this stuff that follows you all over the internet. But Cliff Enico is a regular presenter. I've learned it's important to have disclaimers in your presentations, so mine are a little different from a lawyer's. We're all in this learning process now, and one other quick point, stuff is online and available for download. However, please be cautious and respect people's copyrights, but also understand that quotations like this or screenshots, when used in a larger presentation, would be called fair use, and you're not completely presented from using somebody else's material, but you do need to be respectful of how you use it. And also, of course, if you have questions, please ask them along the way, because to sit here and listen to what I'm saying and have no idea of what I'm talking about isn't going to help your cause. So let's start with that, okay? Now, if you see that on the dashboard of your car and you do nothing, I can tell you from personal experience that you are going to have a major problem. In the same vein, if you see those little red circles lighten up on your phone or in your computer, it is time to do something, because there are 80,000 doors into and out of a computer. And if you do not plug those holes up, you put your business at risk. To put it differently, once upon a time, cars didn't have bumpers. Then they got seat belts, and then they got airbags. And all along the way, it was being done to make them a safer vehicle. So find a place, a sweet spot somewhere in between doing absolutely nothing to take care of your computer and technology and total paranoia. And there will be a place for you somewhere in between. It's kind of like when you're driving down that road and they tell you to observe the speed limit, but you don't pay any attention to it. It's not a good idea anymore, because every now and then, if you don't do those updates, you could find yourself with a really big problem. Now, as of last month, Microsoft is no longer supporting Windows 7. The current operating system that Microsoft supports is Windows 10. My recommendations on Windows 10 are Windows 10 Pro, 64-bit. It makes the software run faster. 8 gigabytes of RAM is the base that I recommend. Otherwise, you will be cursing at the machine that you are running. A solid state drive of 256 gigabytes will give you enough room for your email, unless you are in a business that requires a lot of images. Images add bloat to emails because they just keep growing bigger and bigger. You may want to get a larger hard drive than that. at one of the schools that I work at. I am changing Windows 7 computers into a Linux operating system called Ubuntu. It's a free download. You can put it onto a DVD or onto a thumb drive, and you can turn your Windows 7 computer, after you have taken your important data off, into a different type of machine that would be impervious to any of the viruses and garbage that would attack a Windows computer, because Ubuntu is a different operating system. Please don't go there if you don't know what you're doing. My email is at the bottom. You're welcome to ask questions. And understand that if you as a business owner do not keep current with these things, and you want your credit card payments to marry into your QuickBooks or some other processing of your payments, unless you are in current software, you may not be able to get paid. So that's Kyle Kashoff. He was a student at Parkland. He was one of 2 students who got into Harvard. Unfortunately for Kyle, somebody went looking at his postings online and found some stuff that Harvard decided to rescind that admission to him. And he appealed and said, please reconsider. It's not the person that I used to be. And unfortunately, Harvard said to him, we get 42,000 applications, of which we take 2,000 people, and we wish you the best of luck at whatever it is that you do, but Harvard is not the place where you're going to be doing it. We are in a society and a culture now where the disgruntled person who has an axe to grind can go online and can find stuff to do it with. And understand that this isn't an article that was here in the United States. This is an article from the British Broadcasting Company. They're publishing this stuff about us over the pond, across the pond, excuse me. It is information that travels globally faster than we can blink our eyes now. Please proceed cautiously, because the tales of people who have put things online in social media, there's just too many of them to recount. By the way, Governor Rauner was the governor of Illinois, and this young man had his job for 1 day before, again, somebody who had an axe to grind showed the governor that this young fellow had posted some bad stuff, and he was fired after 1 day of work. Now, one of my favorite stories is about the guy who could make $1 bazillion, and all he had to do was say 1 word and 1 word only. And that was Gilbert Gottfried. All he had to say for the rest of his life was Aflac. He was the voice of the duck. Until there was a tsunami in Japan, he did 10 postings, just like you're seeing here on Twitter, and he's out of a job. This PR woman, she got on a plane, she did her posting, and by the time she landed in South Africa, she was unemployed. And understand that this article about Justine Sacco is over 5 years old. It doesn't go away once it's online. And I urge you to remember that old Bob Seger song, "The Internet Never Forgets." It's really true. You know what I'm talking about. And again, set and forget, no longer the case. This is a naturopathic doctor, and I am convinced that he is not monetizing porn from his website, but you've got to go online, make sure the website that you're running hasn't been hacked, hasn't been compromised, and is saying the things that you want it to say. Now, another issue that you're dealing with today is the number of people who are relying on the internet for information. However, I want to juxtapose this 86% of computers against the 583 million fake accounts that Facebook deleted. That's a lot of phony people who could be saying a lot of phony stuff. And I want to show you, it is really important to understand that you cannot always tell who is posting the information that you are taking as the gospel truth about the internet information and the product you're looking for or the service. There's no way to tell anymore. Proceed cautiously with this. Personally, the only reviews that I read now aren't the 5s. I want to read the 1s. I want to know why somebody didn't like something. I want to know the percentage of 1s that you got. If there's a high percentage of 1s, it's not a product I'm going to buy. If it's a low percentage, then I got to review them and make a decision. And understand going forward that a lot of your online marketing is going to be the establishing of trust and credibility with your customers. And all of this stuff that's going online, it's all traceable. It's called your digital footprint. So understand, you can say whatever it is that you want online, you can post it wherever you want, but there is no freedom from consequence for what you say. So please proceed cautiously on that. If you haven't read Dave Barry's Year in Review, it's good for a laugh. He's a very funny guy. Now, over the last year or two, Google and Facebook have finally disclosed to us how we can turn off the tracking which has those Nike sneakers on every website you look at. Here goes. That Washington Post article will walk you through the details. It's written by Jeffrey Fowler. He is an excellent writer. I've come to the point of, if he writes it, I read it. And he does his homework. He has hot links to the locations within Facebook that will allow you to turn off all of the activity. It is important, however, that you be logged into Facebook before you can make those hot links work. Understand that a lot of the verbiage they're going to use is deliberately confusing. Gray means off. You want things to be gray, and Facebook will not be following you anymore. Now, if you go to myactivity.google.com and you log in with your Gmail account, you can turn off the advertising personalization. And don't worry about that very sad computer down there. There's a couple of billion other people that Google can pick on. But if you turn off the advertising personalization, they won't be picking at you. After you turn that off, you can turn off the web and app activity. You can turn off the tracking of YouTube videos. You can shut down all of the methods that Google was using to track you. And from inside of Google, they are also going to send you over to aboutads.info, which is an independent third-party website. You click on the consumer choice page, and when you get to there, you will be able to shut down the advertising from 134 different online advertisers. I go online, and where my ads would pop up, I now get a lot of white space. It's much better that way, at least in my opinion. So, does anybody besides me remember getting this email from Zappos that they were going to give me a discount because 5-7 years ago they were hacked? If you didn't know, Zappos is under the umbrella of Amazon. And as you know, the owner of Amazon is Jeff Bezos, who I feel pretty confident in saying can afford to hire a qualified person to take care of his firewall and make sure that everything is safe and protected from people getting onto his website. So how does something like this happen at a company where they know that people are coming in and they need to safeguard against it? Well, you can block people from the outside, but you can't necessarily block people from the inside. Did anybody besides me see this article earlier or last year? You put a thumb drive inside the firewall and you can get anything you want onto a computer network, and whatever problems can then ensue. I'm not sure that this woman who was going into Mar-a-Lago had that James Bond thing going on, but again, this is all of what's happening now. We need to be conscious of it. Think about who has those keys to the kingdom of your business. Who can get into your bank accounts? Who has your credit cards? Who has your email password? These are all places where it's a really good idea to safeguard and lock down that access. Because if you don't, things are going to happen that may require you to close your business. Because low-hanging fruit, people are just out there trolling and looking for it. And by the way, I've seen from several places now that the FBI is reporting that in 2020, rather than businesses and small businesses being targets, home users who've done very little in the way of protection are now going to become targets for phishing and for all of this malware, because they've collected lots of documents, lots of pictures, lots of video, a music collection. And if somebody says, you can't have this back until you pay me $300, there are many people who will do it because they haven't got a backup. And understand that this thing, spear phishing, is where somebody is targeting you. So antivirus isn't the only method of protection. You've got to watch out for yourself. I've been recommending this GCA cybersecurity toolkit. They have, subsequent to the recommendation, taken down a number of the features they had initially, despite the fact that MasterCard is sponsoring them. I am still a huge fan of Bitdefender. If you go to Google and ask for Bitdefender free, there is still a free antivirus from Bitdefender for home use. I'll say that again because it's important. For home use, there is a free Bitdefender product. And also understand that Windows Defender, which is a product that comes with Windows 10, is now getting rated favorably by ZDNet, which is part of CBS. However, it's important to remember this phrase here, which is good enough, which gets incorporated into a phrase that my brother has been telling my children for more years than I can remember, which is, don't do anything stupid. And combine that with your antivirus, read carefully, and you'll be safer than not paying attention. Because understand, that's a record to me. 69,000 spyware items on a computer. You gotta watch what you're doing. And by the way, Super Anti-Spyware has both a paid and a free program. The Super Anti-Spyware free version, you have to run manually. One other item you might want to run manually on about a monthly basis or so is Malwarebytes, which again, they have both paid and free versions. If you do the work manually, the free version works just fine. So there are two kinds of people in the world, those who back up and those who will. And for a lot of public schools, and in the state of Connecticut, there were 7 school districts this past year who got hit with ransomware. 7 districts in Connecticut alone, 49 across the country. The town of Wolcott paid $10,000 to get their data back. This is massive amounts of money. $5 million payday in the course of a year. Ransomware can be a really good business. As I said, there's 2 kinds of people in the world, those who back up and those who will. You've been hit by ransomware, you will start to back up. If you have a backup and you're ransomed, you can wipe whatever it is and pull from your backup. And the information that we're getting about this is not timely anymore because it's happening so quickly. This was an article last year, October. There's only one problem with the photograph that they're using for this article, which is the fact that that's no longer the Pitney Bowes headquarters. It's now an elementary school. So even the people who are reporting on this stuff aren't able to keep up with all of what's going on currently. So again, backup is a really important thing. I will go over it in a little while in a slightly greater detail. So, email, the lifeblood of many of our businesses now. And nobody wants to get that. Nobody wants to get that one. So, I don't know if you remember the play, The 6 Degrees of Separation. I think it was also a movie with Kevin Bacon. But when it comes to email, it works like this. I send an email to our host, Alan. Alan sends an email back to me. Alan knows people that I don't know. I know people that Alan doesn't know. Those people know people that neither of us knows. And as it goes farther out those circles, you can't tell whether you're talking to the good guys or the bad guys. So I am a very big advocate of not using reply all. It is a terrible, terrible thing to disclose the emails of all of the people that you either know or work with. I am a huge fan of BCC, blind carbon copy. You send your reply. If other people need to know, include them with a BCC so you aren't sharing their emails with everybody else. And this Microsoft activity, as you can see, if you clicked on that blue button, since there's no Microsoft logo and there's some typos, you would be, in a politically correct phrase, screwed. Now, this is another one, and this is one of my favorites. I have one more coming up. You see, I know for a fact that FedEx International Priority Direct Distribution, which I've never sent any package internationally, does not need to use support@dentistelmhurstny.com as their email address because FedEx has FedEx.com for their email. So again, if I were to get that shipment label, I would be, in a politically correct phrase, yes, you know, screwed. Now, this is my latest phishing attempt, and I absolutely love this. Let's walk through this. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, sent me a personal email from his Polish email service telling me that there is $1.5 million waiting to be transferred to me if I contact the only Western Union post office in the state of California. And I emailed Ms. Betsy Holden at her Gmail account to get it. If you read your emails, they're really good for a giggle and they won't put you at risk. We are all living and dying by passwords right now. And I know it's a nuisance, but if you lock your car or you lock your business or you lock your home, passwords are just a way of locking your life online. So I want to talk about what's called the LEET language. It's short for elite, and it's basically the transposing of letters for numbers or characters or symbols. And you don't need to go crazy with things like anti-disestablishmentarianism, because that cap-H catches me all the time. However, if you are looking for a bulletproof style of password, think of a person, place, or thing. Then transpose it in the LEET language, and just remember not to write it and put it down on that monitor, because in the world of social engineering, people will look over your shoulder and see what you're doing. This is not where you put your passwords, please. I'm a big believer in hiding in plain sight. Create a spreadsheet called birthdays and anniversaries, shopping list, wedding guests. You can password protect an Excel spreadsheet. Just remember not to call it the secret passwords are in this spreadsheet. You can click here if you're looking for them. That's a really bad name for your spreadsheet. And again, to quote from Sun Tzu, who wrote this 500 years before Christ was born, remember to keep your friends close, your enemies closer, your mobile devices even closer than that, and your passwords as close as humanly possible while avoiding physical discomfort. He might not have written those last two parts, but you get the general picture of what I'm saying. Proceed cautiously. These are important pieces of information for your life these days. Now, once upon a time, you could buy a musket in America and you didn't need a permit or a background check. You could buy snake oil in America and you didn't need FDA approval or clinical trials. And you could crank up your car, chase the chickens around your front yard, and you didn't need a driver's license or insurance. In each of those cases, the rules, laws, regulations, ordinances, call it whatever you would like, changed for the safety and well-being of the general public. To buy a computer today, you don't even need cash. You take your pre-approved credit card, you go online, and in 2 days, that little puppy will land at your doorstep. So the question has become whether the rules, laws, regulations, ordinances, call it whatever you like, need to change for technology use for the general public. And I would suggest that you ask this collection of people, which doesn't seem to ever be ending. And let this just sort of run through. Yep, all these people have been hacked. They've all been hacked. They've all had to announce it. So I think it's time for change or to proceed cautiously, because right now there are requirements coming into play, the California Consumer Protection Act. If you do business in Europe, there's GDPR, more about that in a little bit, but there is change coming. Be at the front of the line, please. And understand that a lot of what we're using, the people who've made it don't fully understand what's going on, because it hasn't been around long enough to figure it out. Now, as anyone who's ever done a presentation will tell you, there are 3 parts to a presentation. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them, also known as the recap. So, updates. This is something that you can do yourself. You see those red dots, update your stuff, please. With education, remember that everything is traceable. The General Data Protection Regulation requires that you if you are doing business in Europe, that people have the right to be forgotten and you must safeguard their data. The difference between the General Data Protection Regulation and the California Consumer Protection Act is that in GDPR, you must opt into whatever advertising is being done. With California Act, you still need to opt out. Remember or figure out who has the keys to your kingdom. Do you want to change those passwords to play those cards a little closer to your vest? Understand that while antivirus will be a great thing to have, it is not going to supplant your doing something stupid. So proceed cautiously. Read your emails before you click on them. Check who those emails came from. Backups. I am a big fan of what's called the 3-2-1-1 backup. Put your data in 3 different places, 2 different media, one of them off-site, one of them offline. It works like this. 3 different places. Your data is on your computer. Your data is on a thumb drive. Your data is online with a OneDrive or a Google Drive. 3 different places. 2 different media. That external hard drive, a CD, that Google Drive. While it's a place to keep it, it's not necessarily a backup unless you've got the one-off site, which could be something like Carbonite or Mozy, which, by the way, are owned by the same company. The difference between online backup and online storage, online backup being Carbonite or Mozy versus online storage like Dropbox, Google Docs, or OneDrive, is that if something gets corrupted in online storage on the laptop you use, there is a high level of probability that the desktop files will get corrupted as well because they're all talking to each other, which is why that last number 1, the one offline, is where all the work gets done and where you save yourself. If you are on Apple, you can use Time Machine. And what I do is on a regular basis, when I'm very busy, it could be once a day. If I'm not so busy, once a week, once every 2 weeks, I plug in Time Machine. I let my computer do the backup to update Time Machine. I unplug Time Machine and I put it on a shelf. If you are in Windows, Windows 10 now has a built-in backup called File History, where again, if you plug it in, you ask for File History to run, and at the end of it, you unplug the drive you're filing to. Here's what happens. If something on your computer blows up sick dead, you can reformat the computer. You can reach to the shelf where you've got an unattached drive, plug that drive in, and put all of your data back onto the computer. If the drive is attached, the possibility of corruption to your backup becomes greater. Offline means you have something pristine and safe. And remember, with emails, you read what you're doing, please use BCCs, do not reply all. You put people at risk when you reply all. Everybody in the world gets that email address, and then you wonder why there's so much spam in your inbox. And then, of course, remember, keep those passwords really, really close. So, I've been blathering for a fair amount of time. If you've got some questions, please fire away. It is time to stump the professor. Anybody? Anything? Can I help with anything on there? Well, if you look at the bottom, my cell phone is there, my email address is there, my website is there. Please feel free to ask away or send a note if you want. Um, Happy to help.
Since there are no questions, I'd just like to thank Bud for his presentation today.
There's
And
one question that just came in.
No, a question, a question.
What are your thoughts about constant contact?
Ah.
Is it secure?
I'm not going to speak to the security of constant contact because I would believe that any company that's got at least hundreds of people working there has people dedicated to the securing of constant contact, number one. Constant contact's security is going to be based on how cautious you are with your username and password, number one. Number two, the other thing about constant contact is the quantity of constantly contacting you are going to do. In other words, if you are perpetually poking at people, after a while, they're not going to pay attention anymore. Security, I think that most of the larger websites have wised up. Constant Contact is a global entity. They're doing business in Europe. The benchmark for security today is GDPR. If you dig through our archives, last year, year before, I did a webinar on GDPR. It will give you a very clear recounting of all of the requirements. People are getting fined for not complying with GDPR. So secure, yeah, without a careful read, I would say yes, because if not, Constant Contact can't do business in the European Union. Second question, I can read it. Okay. Please recap what the 3211 backup. Yes, that's a regular one. Okay, 3211 backup. Put your data in 3 different places, 2 different media, one of them off-site and one of them offline. And again, 3 different media would be the computer you're working on and you've written a letter and it sits in your My Documents folder. A second place would be the thumb drive that you put a copy onto. A third place would be an online access like Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Docs. So those are your 3 different places. 2 different media. One of those media would be a thumb drive, an external hard drive, a burnable CD, a burnable DVD. Those would all be a second location. Then again, it would be OneDrive, Dropbox, Google Drive. Those are all external places. One of them off-site. And again, the off-site would be Google Drive, would be Dropbox, it would be OneDrive. But for backup, which is paid service, your backup off-site is going to be either Mozy or Carbonite, which, as I said, those are both companies that are owned by the same parent. However, what they do is keep multiple copies that are completely unconnected to a computer network. And I've had to call up Carbonite, and what they do is put a incredibly unique identifier to their files. So you may call it My Letter to Bud. They call it My Letter to Bud 1234 XYZ. And they're digging in a room that's down the hall, take a left turn, go down a flight of stairs. Then they find that copy and then they give it back to you. And then there's the offline. And the offline is where you can avoid the mosey or carbonite if you do this religiously. And it's very important to do this religiously. On the Mac side of life, it is Time Machine. If you've got a computer that's got a 1 terabyte drive, you need to purchase a 1 terabyte external hard drive. You plug it in, you let Time Machine do the copy, you unplug it when it's done and put it on a shelf so it's not touching anything in your computer network. It is a standalone, completely away item. On the Windows side of life, Windows 10 has something called File History, which is the Windows equivalent of Time Machine, where again, you can plug it in, you'll do your backup. When you're done, unplug it and put it on a shelf. If something attacks a computer and your backup is not attached to it, it's safe and pristine after you fix the computer and solve the problem. Then you can attach those standalone backups and be able to recover your data. Let's see, about the external drive. I back up once a week, but I decide to delete documents on my computer during that week and then do another backup. Does backup refresh and get rid of the documents that had deleted on my computer? The way Time Machine works is that it's, I believe it's called an incremental backup. On Monday, I had all of this stuff. On Tuesday, I had all of that stuff. On Wednesday, and so on down the line. You may have to go digging farther and farther back to find something if you are looking for it. But in the world of backup, nobody wants to lose anything. So in the world of incremental, they just keep adding to the front end of it and retaining what's in the back. Hope that helped. And best customer relations management, best email campaign. The best email campaign is the one that does not perpetually annoy the people that you're email campaigning to. So don't do it on a very regular basis unless you've really got something to offer. Customer relations management. Quite frankly, I don't use it. So there's some that are, there's sales. I can give you generic names like Salesforce. Something plugs into Outlook, though when I touched it a number of years ago, it was just prohibitive in the configuration of it. Let me give you an analogy on CRMs. Hopefully this will work. Sitting on the night table next to my bed is the book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay? And I will tell you without question that habit number 1 is that you must read the book. In other words, you can have the best customer relations management system in the world, but if you don't keep updating the data, if you don't keep putting new information in, if you don't record every telephone call and the notes from it, you could spend a fortune on the CRM, but it's not going to do you any good. You'll be just as happy using something like Evernote. I am a huge fan of Evernote. If you create an Evernote page for your Bud Freund calls and date them and just put a listing of what you did, you're as good a CRM as spending money on a CRM program and not putting the data in. It's not about the program, it's about the diligent use of the program. Hope that helps. Let's see. Anything else I can, recommendation for a Mac? Great question. Here's what I tell people at the simple steps for starting your business on how to pick the hardware that you use. Once upon a time in the business groups that I've been in, there was Arlene and there was Brian. Now, Brian would show up at your office with an iPad mini and his AT&T unlimited data plan. And with blazing thumbs, he would map out your social media program in Hootsuite going a month into the future. Okay? And he was great at it. He's still probably thriving. He's not in my business group. Arlene would take that shoebox full of black and white photographs and Super 8 movies and the VHS videos and throw them into all of the machinery that she had in her office to turn it into a digital something or other that she would then set to music and burn a DVD to create the schmaltziest 50th wedding anniversary program presentation you've ever seen in your life. Brian would not want to schlep all of the hard drives and dual monitors and Wacom tablets and all of the other stuff that Arlene needed to do her work. And conversely, there is no way that Arlene could have crafted the DVDs that she makes with the iPad mini that Brian uses to run his business. So what's the best machine to work? Depends on what you do. These days, I spend time at multiple places. So for me, a laptop becomes highly viable. I also spend a fair amount of time in Photoshop. And for $10, you can get a piece of software onto your tablet, your iPad tablet, called Duet. Pretty sure it's Duet. And with a hard wire connected to your MacBook computer, you can have a second monitor for Photoshop, which allows you to put all of your palettes on the iPad and work your picture on your computer. It is absolutely terrific. It is one of the best $10 investments I ever did, and it allows me to be incredibly mobile. The limitation I used to have for Photoshop was that in order to work an image, rather than constantly moving palettes, I would go home and I'd work the image on dual screens. Now I can do that anywhere I go. Hope that helped. Constant contact, is it secure? The external hard drive, I back up once a week. Oh, we went through that. I think that's pretty much all of it, folks. So I'm going to turn this back over to Alan and put in our, unless there's anybody else, last call, anything else? Going once, going twice, and...
Okay, well, thank you, Bud. And that's all the time we'll have today for questions. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and materials are available within a couple of days on the fairfieldcounty.score.org website. And our next webinar will be at 12 noon, Tuesday, February 18th. The topic, should I use QuickBooks online for my business, with Karen Schwartz presenting. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's live webinar, and please fill out your evaluations that have been sent to you via email. In closing today, I'd just like to thank Bud again, and remember, for free individual counseling, go to the SCORE website and click Request a Mentor. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
And I'm going to jump in one last time. There were two final questions. The Photoshop program is officially known as Adobe Photoshop. There is, however, on the Windows side, another program called Paint.net. It is free. It is Photoshop on Weight Watchers or something along those lines. And somebody had asked about Ubuntu. Ubuntu.com. It is a Linux software operating system, Linux operating system. You can download it for free from ubuntu.com. And now we are going to say thank you all for listening and have a great day.